Hi, I'm Isobel from Photo Media. For today, we're going to talk about white balance. So every source of light has a slightly different color temperature. Generally, we don't notice these fluctuations because our eyes do a kind of auto white balance to mediate this difference in color temperature. A lot of cameras too will automatically white balance the light sources in our images to render them neutral. If you have your DSLR on auto white balance or AWB, it will sense any imbalance in the hue of the light and counterbalance it. This can be correct around 90% of the time. If you start working with flash or artificial light, or you're working with a scene in which neutrality is really important, like a white on white studio scene, then this auto white balance doesn't cut it. As a general rule, we want to avoid working in auto white balance. If we're after consistency and accuracy in the color of our images across a series, then it's important to set our white balance based on the lighting conditions we're working with. You can find your camera's white balance setting in the menu of your camera. You'll also likely have a white balance shortcut somewhere on the body of your camera. You have the option of the following white balance presets. You can see here how they change the color cast of my scene as I navigate through them. When setting the white balance of your camera, think about the light that's illuminating your scene. Is it coming from a fluorescent bulb in an office building? Is it coming from the sun but it's diffused by clouds? Is it coming from a tungsten bulb in a nearby table lamp? You then choose the appropriate white balance, fluoro, cloudy day, or tungsten setting on your camera to render your scene as neutral. If you do choose a setting based on what you think is the ambient light, but it doesn't look neutral on your camera's LCD screen, don't panic, because often those screens aren't especially accurate. We can only really judge colour accurately once we take the images off the camera and view them on a well-calibrated monitor. There's always the option to colour correct in post-production, but we want to get the colour temperature as right as we can on camera. As this is the case, it's still really important to avoid shooting in auto white balance. If you're shooting in auto white balance with an eye to correcting in Lightroom, you're going to have minute fluctuations in between each image in terms of color temperature, so batch processing is going to be extremely difficult. Pick a white balance setting and stick with it, even if it doesn't look 100% accurate. Stick with it for the duration of your shoot. Now we're going to talk about advanced white balance. So in particular, we're going to talk about custom white balancing with a grey card. So an additional step we can take if we want to make sure our white balance is perfectly on point is to do a custom white balance. For this, we need a grey card or something similar. It needs to be a perfectly colour neutral surface. With your grey card in hand, take a photograph of it under the ambient lighting conditions that you're shooting in, so it's fully illuminated by the ambient light, making sure that the image isn't too over or underexposed. Now, navigate to the white balance settings on your camera and select Custom White Balance. The screen will then display your latest image. Zoom in so that that grey card completely covers the area of your screen and press OK. Now that you've set that, go up to your white balance settings and select Custom, which is that little flower looking symbol. Your white balance should now be perfectly accurate. And because the camera has taken any warm or cool imbalance in the rendering of that grey card and corrected it. Starting your workflow with an image of a grey card is a great habit to get into, regardless of whether you then set a custom white balance on your camera or not. If you have that perfectly target neutral grey card at the beginning of your shoot, it means that you can use the white balance dropper in Lightroom to white balance not only that image, but all of the images in your workflow using a batch process. I think that's it.